My name is Drake, running real estate here on YouTube. Today we are going to talk about how to select a marathon, so let's get right into it. Over the past 10 days, since I posted a 3:02:22 at the Little Rock Marathon in my first Boston qualifier attempt, I've had to go back to the drawing board in selecting races for 2022. I had a lot of trouble with the selection process, so before we go any further, if you're interested in seeing what races I selected for 2022 with a primary spring race and then a fall marathon, stay tuned because we'll go over that at the end. Like I said, I found this process to be nearly impossible. The hardest part was factoring in outside elements like work, life, relationships, events that you have coming up. Along with in the spring, the weather is ever changing in the US, so it's very tricky to find a race that you think is going to be favorable weather-wise. Guys, if you like the videos that we're putting out onto the internet so far, please like this video and give us a thumbs up. It'll help us to keep going, and it'll really make my producer and I feel like we're taking that next step in our YouTube journey. In my selection process, I didn't find a lot of content about actually selecting a marathon course, so this video is for you guys. If you're looking for your first marathon and you need a resource, I'm here to be that resource. If you're someone like me, let's say you're trying to break 4 hours or 3:30 or 3:15, or you're looking for a favorable PR course, this video is for you. I would recommend selecting a primary spring race and a primary fall race. The reason being, these are going to be the most favorable weather conditions with the changing seasons and allow you a training block that is going to be advantageous with the weather. You made it through the long intro. Now let's get into what are the key factors when selecting a marathon. Number one most key factor is elevation gain. And if you ask me, there are two major variables when selecting a marathon. The first is elevation gain, and the second is the historical weather at the race's location. However, looking at number one and number two, it's pretty clear that there's one thing you can control and there's one that you can't. So don't pick a race that has a hard course because you think the weather may be perfect. Pick a flat, favorable course that has a shot at good weather, and you will have a better outcome. I'm officially on team. If you are going for a PR, select a race based on elevation gain. Keynote on this video, we're going to talk cumulative elevation gain, which is only talking about the ascent of a hill, not the descent. So you're adding up all of the ascents in this picture below. This is my personal methodology. I like to think of things in terms of an easy, medium, and hard. So I've banded elevation gain into 3 bands. So what I have is easy at 0 to 400, a rolling course at 400 to 800, and a very difficult course at anything over 800 feet of total elevation gain. I know what you're thinking, and let me stop you there. Please like the video. But also, let me add that a 400-foot elevation gain course is going to be considerably easier than an 800-foot elevation course, and there's some blurred lines kind of in the middle there. The race I just completed in Little Rock was right at about 800, and depending on the course profile of when the elevation hits, that can be very difficult. Elevation gain can be really tricky to find. My recommendation when you're looking for elevation gain is find a friend or a friend of a friend or a random connection that you know that has run the race you're targeting, and actually do the running version of like social media creeping. Go through their Strava profile if you can find it and actually get to that race, because not only are you going to get the final number on elevation gain total, you can also go into the mile by mile splits and determine when the elevation will hit in the race, and that'll give you a far better understanding in your selection process. Historical weather is so important, and while you can't control the weather, you can get a good read. What I do is I look at the last 10 years on that specific day that the race is going to be held at the race site, and I see what the historical weather is year over year. That'll give you an indicator of what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and could I survive it, and what is probably going to happen that kind of falls in the middle, say your average year, your years 3 through 7 in terms of how good the weather was. That's going to really help you know what you're walking into. Some more obvious tips: ensure that the historical weather patterns for the race you're targeting somewhat match what you're currently training in. Let's talk about number 3, which is the course profile. The example I want to give is 2 races that are both 1,000 feet of cumulative elevation gain, and you tell me which one you would rather run. The first race has a 1,000-foot hill in the first 5 miles. You go straight down that 1,000-foot hill, and then it is completely flat for the rest of the race. The other marathon is particularly tough in that it is completely flat for the first 21.2 miles. And then there is a 1,000-foot climb to the finish line. So point being, which one would you rather choose? This is kind of the next level of cumulative elevation gain. The course profile is important to understand because say 1,000 foot of gain with 10 100-foot hills is going to be a lot different than that super flat course I just described that absolutely smacks you in the end with a 5-mile uphill climb. This is particularly important if you're someone that is limited with travel, maybe it's due to family obligations or just the cost, and you're split between 2 marathons and they're about the same elevation gain because of where you live. Look at the course profile and see which one's going to be a better fit. Running Real Estate viewers and friends, we're almost there. I have one more point and then I will reveal my races for 2022 with my primary spring and primary fall marathon. The last point is the number of finishers in the marathon. I think this is the best indicator of the race day environment. A massive marathon in the United States specifically will be about 10,000 finishers. So that's gonna be your New Yorks, your Boston, San Diego, LA. And while these races are really big, what I found from my experience running in New York was even though it was crowded and I had to weave in and out of people for the first few miles, and you could say that's a detriment, the energy and the excitement of participating in a race this big offsets that frustration and the difficulty. Another thing you might face is you might be waiting for an hour or 2 longer before the race, being at the starting line, but actually having to wait your turn to start the race or go in your corral. So expect that, but I do think that these races can still be beneficial for a PR. In my opinion, on down from there, you've got the large marathons, which would be 10,000. Your medium size would be around 5,000, and those are gonna have a very similar feel. And then you start getting to your smaller marathons, under 1,000 finishers. Those are gonna be difficult if you're somebody that's fueled by people cheering at you and the energy and the excitement that you would expect of a race day. You might not find that when you get down into these 500 finisher type races. But if you like running in peace and quiet and that sounds awesome and you like the scenery, that might be one that makes more sense for you than one of the major city marathons that I described earlier. Now it's time to unveil what my 2 marathons are going to be for my primary races. Let's get right into it. My spring marathon will be the Woodlands Marathon, just due north of Houston, Texas on March 5th, 2022. Very excited about this one. Let's get to the stats. This marathon has an elevation gain of about 400, so about half as much elevation gain as I experienced in Little Rock. The course profile is mostly some small rolling hills, and the environment should be noisy in some sections, quiet in others, kind of a mixed bag for a 1,000 finisher race. Weather-wise, this happens to be the time of the year where Houston is really ramping up into the warm season. So I'm hoping that with the race being early on in March, I can catch that average low of 47 degrees, come in with what I would expect to be 70–80% humidity and some low wind. Now it's time for the big one. My fall marathon in 2022 will be none other than the Chicago Marathon, and you guessed it, Chicago, Illinois, the Windy City in mid-October of next year. Not only is this one of the 6 marathon majors, one of 3 in the United States, this race is also 243 feet of total elevation gain, so extremely favorable, and you're running my favorite city streets. I don't really like trails. I like running the roads. I like the energy of having buildings and cars and just different things to look at. So that will be perfect for this race. The race day weather, same as Woodlands, an average low of about 47, but Chicago is notorious for being potentially a really bad draw if it's unseasonably warm, or it could be really cold, which wouldn't be a problem. And as always in Chicago, you're gonna get a little bit of the wind off the lake. I really enjoyed bringing this video to you guys. It's so easy to talk about something that I'm so passionate about, and it's given so much back to me, and it's only right that I start to give back to the community and help bring people along. So if you have any other questions, please drop it in the comments. I hope this helped with your race selection for next year. This is Drake, running real estate here on YouTube. I'm out.